entrepreneurs at different times tried to establish indigenous art galleries of indigenous art in China, and they haven't been successful. I think still at this stage, in China's thinking about indigenous art, they see it as minority art. China has lots and lots of minority groups that have their own art and so on. They have to go beyond seeing Australian indigenous art as they view their own minority ethnic art. So there is I think, an area to develop, an area of evolution, but there is quite some way to go.
All right, now there's a question here. There's a question at microphone number 3, if I may.
Robert Peck von Harder Architects. Geoff, just in commentary about the Indigenous art, the Koori Heritage Trust in Victoria is doing a remarkably good job at attracting international visitation, and where they are teaching the art of the history of Indigenous art. So we don't have one in Sydney. My question relates to your comments about tourism in general, but in particular comes back to earlier comments in this morning's sessions about the need for increased infrastructure in tourism in Australia and the potential for Chinese interest in that. And the example that one might quote is the Mirage Port Douglas, where we've got Chinese investment there in an existing piece of infrastructure. Would you care to comment about how you would go about answering the question raised earlier about getting Chinese investment into tourism infrastructure in Australia and the mechanisms by which you go about it?
Excellent question, and I remember to bring my business cards and give you one after the session. Look, generally with Chinese investment, there's a huge outpouring of Chinese investment. Australia is a very much favoured destination. I'm not aware personally of great appetite amongst Chinese investors to invest in tourism at this stage offshore. Even onshore, if you look, most of the quality hotels and so on, foreign branded, foreign managed. I think it's still a developing sector. The danger might be, though, that if they are not careful, they will think about investing in Australia for, if you like, mass Chinese tourism and try and introduce a Chinese type of tourist product into Australia, which I think wouldn't go very well. But to the extent a strong business proposition can be put to potential Chinese investors, there's certainly money there. But it would need to be a fairly sophisticated investor from China, I think, to have much appetite at this stage. Again, that will come. There are areas where you may have better success. I was just thinking, for example, in Perth, there's really no longer a 5-star standard hotel in Perth. And given the very large number of Chinese who know about Perth and Western Australia through the resources trade and the big numbers of very senior Chinese who travel in and out of Perth on a regular basis for business, you could, by tying into something like that story, and there's a narrative around it, I think, make a good case for maybe doing something in Perth.
All right, a final question from microphone number 3 in this part of the room. Front left there. 4.
Thanks, Geoff. Carl Flowers. A question about visa policy. Normally our visa policy is reciprocal, and obviously with the Chinese government that's more difficult. Would there be perhaps opportunities for Australia to negotiate with the Chinese government to bring 1,000 or 2,000 Chinese tourism employees to Australia for work experience, and thereby get a stock of ambassadors to Australia in future years? And if that's not a hard enough question, have you, having left the Foreign Service, got some views about education visa policy?
It's always the last question you look out for.
Yes, I thought we were stop questions. I'm the first one, and it was David made the point. We have a fantastic electronic visa regime. I think that's pretty good, and I don't think that is a big barrier to Chinese tourists. What does trip us up a bit, though, is Chinese tourists may want to actually transit Australia, spend a couple of days in Sydney, and then go off somewhere else in the Pacific or New Zealand. And having to get a visa to transit Australia does deny us, I think, a couple of important good nights on the way out through Australia. But by and large, I don't think it's a big barrier. I'm bringing Chinese workers in. We've got our various schemes to do that. I think the government's looking at that still. And on tourist visas, well, look, we have on education visas, we have 138,000 Chinese students studying in Australia last year. That compares with just 100,000 in the United States. We also have in absolute terms all of them studying in the United Kingdom. So to the extent there may be some friction, there may be some issues around visas, it doesn't seem to be a big impediment. It doesn't seem to dampen the appetite of Chinese students coming to Australia.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please thank Geoff Raby. All right.